There are many fan bases that believe they are special or better than others. And while there is no standard of metric that makes one fan base elevated above another, in Seattle, Seahawks fans have found a separating factor that finds them laying a strong claim to being the NFL's best. For no other fans can make the same boast of having as direct an impact on the game to the degree Seahawks fans have had in the past. And never was this more apparent than on the date of November 28, 2005. But before we begin, a little prologue first. In the 1980s, the Seattle Seahawks played indoors in the concrete jungle known as the Kingdome. As the Seahawks improved, the fans started cheering louder. They quickly realized the dome's roof was reverberating their cheers, and if they screamed to the top of their lungs, it could get to near deafening on the field, to the point of causing the opposing team's offenses to false start. Word spread like wildfire throughout the great Northwest. When you enter the Kingdome on game day, be ready to lose your voice. It became a problem for the rest of the NFL. Not only did the fans cause false starts, but the opposing offenses couldn't even hear the calls in the huddle.
Wave has taken over the Kingdome. It began here in Seattle, the University of Washington, and they do it, I guess, basically to perfection. They're quite proud of it. Session of the night. Boy, they are noisy.
They are noisy. And
Seahawks ownership acknowledged the fans' impact by retiring the number 12 jersey in honor of this 12th man. Rather than adjust, teams around the league incessantly bitched and moaned about the noise to the commissioner, until finally the NFL implemented a hastily thought out and idiotic rule to penalize home team fans for being too loud. It led to ridiculous moments like this.
If the noise persists, the defense will be charged with a timeout.
That's right. NFL referees threw flags on the 12th man, not for throwing batteries at the official or rushing the field, but because the fans were too heartily rooting on the team.
Once again, a yellow flag for crowd noise. Can you believe this new rule? Now they've taken away all three Seahawk timeouts. Don't ban the 12th man. A man's got a scream for his team. You know he pays top dollar to hoop fan and let off a little steam.
And as abysmal the idea of these flags for fans' passion, it created a badge of honor in the 12th man that might as well have been branded on their skins. No other fans had ever caused such an odd rule change in sports. And the noise never died down, even as the Hawk teams became awful for a decade. And you would hear the same boisterous cheering and feel the same synergistic energy at Husky Stadium or Key Arena before the Sonics left, or even during the great Seattle Mariner run of the mid-90s. Which brings us back to November 28th, 2005. CenturyLink Field on a sunny Sunday afternoon. It was an unusually warm late fall day. After a couple of seasons of successfully making the playoffs under Mike Holmgren, the Seahawks appeared poised to push for a division title and more. They started the year by going 8-2. Future Hall of Famer Walter Jones and Steve Hutchinson paved the way that year for running back Shaun Alexander to set the rushing touchdown record, in addition to posting nearly 1,900 yards on the ground. Opposing the Hawks that day, the Giants were no slouches. The core of this team was the same that 2 years later would ruin the New England Patriot perfect season by upsetting them in the Super Bowl. They came into this game 7-3, built on the back of a solid rushing attack led by Tiki Barber. After some early career struggles that had some people whispering bust, Eli Manning was finally starting to come into his own thanks to a bevy of top-flight pass catchers in Plaxico Burress, Amani Toomer, and Jeremy Shockey. From a football fan's perspective, this was a marvelous game to watch. The Seahawks opened the scoring with Matt Hasselbeck tossing an absolute dime to Joe Jurvicius, who plucked it right out in front of a defender's face. The Giants answered back as Eli threw a tight dart into Shockey between two Seahawk defenders for a giant touchdown. The game went into halftime 10-7, and it was back and forth from then on out. For each Hawk punch, the Giants countered. When Shaun Alexander cracked 100 yards, Tiki was right behind him with 151. When Hasselbeck put up 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, Eli matched his 2 TDs and added 344 yards passing. But as said, this was not a game about the numbers. Two main factors drove the Seahawks' victory: 3 missed field goals and double-digit false start penalties by the Giants. The legend goes, the 12th man was the cause of it all. When the Seahawks moved into the new open-air stadium in 2001, the talking heads said the 12s would be neutralized. They claimed it was the tight confines of the dome that allowed for the amplification of the noise. The 12th man said, "Challenge accepted." The narrative that the 12th man had seen his day had continued even through the first few years of playing in the new stadium. Despite the high propensity of offside calls on opposing offenses, the talking heads still passed it all off as a fluke. In this game against the Giants, that narrative was smashed for all time. The New York Giants had an incredible 11 false start penalties on the day. And not just 1 or 2 players, but nearly every Giant offensive lineman was afflicted. They just couldn't hear the quarterback, and no practice time had been spent working on using a silent count. Eli's brother Peyton would also later learn on a much bigger stage what happens when you don't practice the silent count in preparation for the 12th man.
Perhaps they just didn't hear that Peyton was trying to extend the snap count, as he often does.
I think it was the 12th man.
I said the snap count. I called the snap count. You didn't hear me. We go. We got to go to the silent count. We got to go to the silent count.
It's called the 12th people, or whatever it's called. And boy, I tell you, they're on fire.
As the offense having a tough time hearing because of the noise from the 12th man.
And he takes the snap. They're going to call illegal motion again. Guard, I think it was the left guard deal.
False start offense number 66.
That's 9 false starts.
It's going to be a trivia question down the road.
The Giants didn't respect the noise coming in, and they paid a heavy price. As the number of offsides calls rose, the fans grew louder. It was like a shark with blood in the water. No analyst needed to tell the 12s they were having a tangible effect on the game. And the more they gave, the more it showed. But despite this deafening obstacle, as the game was winding down, the Giants were putting themselves in a position to win. Late in the fourth, the Giants drove the ball down into field goal range. Giant kicker Jay Feely stepped out onto the field for the winning attempt, having already hit 2 field goals on the day. He was 23 out of 25 on kicks for the year, but something was different on this attempt. The fans were just so loud. The pressure of it all suddenly mounted upon Feely. He unconfidently backed up into his kicking stance, and his plant leg actually seemed to shake. When he barely missed the very makeable 40-yarder, the fans exploded.
It's amazing how this fan base can continue to keep that noise going throughout the game.
On to overtime, and the Giants finally seemed to have figured out their snap counts. They moved the ball with ease and set up their kicker for a long 54-yarder. Incredibly, like Spinal Tap's amps, it seemed the 12th man found another level of volume, all aimed at Jay Feely.
These go to 11.
He looked nervously unsure. It was a long kick into the roar of those screams. The snap, another miss, and another explosion of celebration. The 12th man can just feel it. The effect was real. After a day of endless false start penalties, they had now gained deep access into the kicker's head. The Seahawks offense took the field for the first time in overtime, but quickly punted. Again, the Giant offense surged, getting down the field into field goal range in what felt like no time. Jay Feely took the field again for a 45-yarder, and it felt like this was game. You don't give a good NFL kicker this many tries to beat you. There was just no way the 12s could cause another miss. And yet, the volume rose again to try.
Every time it happened, I don't know how it was possible. It seemed like the crowd so enjoyed it and so realized what they were doing that they got louder each time. I don't know how they did it, but they did it.
In addition to their screams, fans clapped, banged their seats, stomped their feet, One hippie on the lower level was slamming his hands and face into the cushioned wall. The 12s generated a thunder of noise. Feely stepped into his kick. Completely overconfident, giant tight end Jeremy Shockey mugged for the camera as the kick went into flight. The ball dropped 5 yards before even getting to the goalpost. No good. Shockey's mouth fell open in shock. It almost felt like the stadium went quiet for a second, awed, unable to fully comprehend the real magic they just caused. The Seahawks offense returned to the field with a renewed purpose. Matt Hasselbeck hit DJ Hackett on a perfect little bomb, dropping the seed in between the corner and safety and setting up the Seahawks' winning field goal. Game over. Seahawks win. Strangers hugged strangers like family in the stands. They knew they had just participated in and witnessed something truly special. Buoyed by emotional wins like this one, the Seahawks went on this season to the Super Bowl for the very first time in franchise history. It was the setting of a new standard and the hallmark return of a fan base starving for a winner. The rest of the country took note. The 12th man was back. Saturday Night Live even did a sketch that week based around Jay Feely's misses in the game. So here's to you, 12th man. By false starts, by beast quakes, by decibel records, you have proven your elite status amongst any fans of the world, no matter the sport. You're the bane of every visiting team, and it is a glory to watch. Stay loud, 12th man.